When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Good afternoon, party people. It is Saturday. That means it is The Meta Show. Hello. How are you? Guess what? There's no Mark today. It's Merc today. Mark is sick. Therefore, it is Saturday, December the 30th, 2023. It is the eve of New Year's Eve. Last week was the eve of Christmas Eve. Today is the eve of New Year's Eve. And instead of Mark, because Mark is not feeling well, I have brought the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Merkelchen, out of retirement to come hang out with me on the show today. Hello, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm glad to be here. I hope Mark feels better soon.
I hope so too. I tell you, the coughs and the snorts and all the shit that I've been going through the last couple of weeks, I guess has finally made its way down to Georgia, and now he's got sick too. So there you go. So we're going to do a little miniature Rampage Incorporated stream on the Meta Show today. Not really. We've got stuff to talk about. Because guess what? This is our last episode of the year. Because the year ends tomorrow. So what do we do at the end of the year, Mark? What do we typically do?
We drink a lot. I mean, do you mean something actionable or just that?
That is correct. I mean, yes, obviously, that is definitely what we do. But what we do on this show is we look back on the year in EVE Online and talk about all the fun things that have happened over the last 365 days. Is it a montage? I don't know if I would call it a montage, but it is kind of like a PowerPoint presentation. So that's what we're planning on doing today. For those of you who have been wondering what has been going on, there has been a little bit of fighting. We can talk a little bit about that. So there's been a little bit of drama in the last couple of days. We have seen PandaFam messing around in Catch. We've seen PandaFam messing around in Fade. We've seen PandaFam messing around everywhere because that's what they do. And we've seen a little bit of a fight earlier today where it looks like we pushed around Pappy pretty good. But what does all of this mean? Absolutely nothing. This is not anything of substance. This is just people being bored at the end of the year. Mark, do you have anything you'd like to say about the most recent stuff that's been going on in the game?
Yeah, I think, since you saw the northern conflict wind down, people are just sort of charging off into the forest and hoping they run into something along the way. That's kind of as much as this really amounts to. I'm sure the folks whose space are in play obviously care a little bit more than everybody else, but for the most part, this just seems to be some skirmishing for the sake of skirmishing.
That's it. And I would like to say, for the record, that KarmaFleet continues to own EC Tech and Pure Blind.
It got reinforced. Did you see
it get reinforced finally?
I mean, it took a week, but
I was waiting. I was looking. I looked this morning and saw it was vulnerable. I was like, when are they going to reinforce it? Are they going to reinforce it today? That's good. That makes me happy. At least I know that that'll give us something to do next time we get around to going out there for SNS. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. This is our final show of the year. Our top story is the year in EVE Online, and we're going to talk about all the stuff that happened over the last year. And we have our annual top 10 list of the top 10 things that happened in EVE in 2023. And we're going to go over all of them. Some are funny, some are not, some of them are serious, some of them are good, some of them are bad. But in any event, we're going to talk about them all here as we get to our top story, the year in EVE. Now, this felt like a year when nothing happened. I mean, that's what I would have, when I was starting to put this list together, I felt like, man, nothing happened this year. It's been kind of dead. Nothing's really going on. But you know what? We talked about it on the stream last night, on Rampage last night. And by the time we finished that stream, we had so many different things that had happened over the year that I was trying to triage them to figure out, well, which one is the best, which one is good enough to make the list, which one is big enough to make the list, and which ones were funny enough, and those types. And I spent most of the day today cleaning this up and trying to make it look good. So I think we got most of the big stuff. But as always, if you guys think we missed something, I'm always happy to get yelled at in the chat. So just be prepared for that. All right. So before we get started, first thing we have, obviously, we always do this. We have a couple of honorable mentions that we're going to get to that started out the year. This is below the top 10 list. These are things that we wanted to mention, and there are plenty of things I know that we're not going to get to, but these were a couple of the things that we wanted to mention because we felt like this was something that was kind of a big deal when it happened, but it may not be something that you guys totally remember because it wasn't a huge deal. Anyway, first up, our first honorable mention is the gold ammo booster controversy. Do you guys remember this from August?
I completely forgot that was a thing.
Right? Like, this is the thing. And I was going back through my notes over the year, and for about a week, test is not forgiven, but they are ignored. For about a week, we had pitchforks out again. Everybody was pissed. All of the potential momentum that CCP had made with the Viridian expansion in July that had just come out, and with the news coming out potentially about the Havoc expansion and all that stuff, CCP was riding on a high. Like, they actually had some good press. People were pleased with the game. And then the gold ammo thing comes out. And if you all recall, so basically there was a foundation pack that was put out at the end of July. That was, don't you tell me you don't like the font squonking. This is the font we've been using for years. They put this out in the end of July, and it was a combat booster that you could only get by purchasing it through the New Eden store. This was the first time ever that there was a combat impacting booster that you can only get through a sale. And everybody went nuts. And it lasted about a week until CCP pulled it. You can see CCP Arcade here putting this out saying, hey, we're not doing it. Which was kind of a big deal. Merc, how often we didn't see this very often. It took a long time for us to get them to pull back on something like this, but this was pretty quick.
We've seen that, though, a couple times. Don't you feel like in the last couple years where they've tested the water with something, whether it was ships that didn't have to be built by players, that obviously was a big deal when it came around.
The Retriever pack.
Made the news cycle. I feel like these are more just floating them to see how it goes. It would sort of surprise me if in planning the execution of these packs or these boosters or whatever it may be, if they hadn't already discussed a kill switch and taking it out. If the uproar is crazy, let's get rid of it. If nobody cares, that's where the line lies now, you know? So with that one being so sudden and such a quick reversal, that just led me to believe that someone was like, don't wander off with the off switch for that. You know, we may need that in a couple days. And as fate would have it, they did.
And that was a good thing. And I like I said, we give them credit when they do the right thing. Now, granted, we're not going to give them full credit because all they're doing is fixing up something that they messed up in the first place. So we will say thank you, but they don't get an attaboy. They get a thank you. Thank you for pulling this back, which I thought was an important thing to at least note. And Merck's right. We have seen more often in the last year, or I guess I would say last 2 or 3 years, that they've been willing to pull stuff back after it's been put out. CCP of 5 or 6 years ago would have been like, fuck you guys, we're going to do it. The last couple of years, they've actually been listening to the CSM and listening to the player base. And when we get mad about stuff, they pull it back, which is nice. It's nice. And it doesn't take 2 months for it to happen. So we appreciate that. That's our first honorable mention. Second honorable mention, Fraternity wins Alliance Tournament 19. Why is this a big deal? Well, anytime we have an Alliance tournament, it's a big deal. We've had 4. There was a two-year break, 2019, 2020, where there was no Alliance tournament. It was a big deal. Everybody was mad. A lot of people were mad. Some people were mad. The Alliance tournament people were mainly mad. But in any event, they started putting the Alliance tournament back. It is very rare. It is very rare for an actual nullsec alliance that is not put together specifically just for the AT to actually win an AT. And the fact that Fraternity, one of the big null blocks, pulled it off, that's kind of a big deal. And they did a great job. Now, when was the last time an actual nullsec alliance that was not based solely or primarily around the AT won the AT? Can you guess when that was, Merc?
I mean, I have no idea. I would say it's like a PL team or something like that.
Bingo. Pandemic Legion 2015, last time that it happened. That's the last time that it happened. And yeah, I mean, you could make the argument potentially that Tuskers in 2016 might have, you could argue that, but Tuskers has always been about the AT.
Yeah, their name is kind of synonymous with that stuff.
Right. Prior to that, Pandemic Legion was the only other group. And frankly, if you look at the list, and I have it up in front of me here, if you're looking at the list of previous winners, there's only been 3 real big, yes, Mrs. Brisc, PL is the small one. There's only been 3 like standard nullsec, like common name alliances that have won the Alliance tournament. Band of Brothers won the first couple, and they were a big name nullsec group. PL and now Fraternity, they joined the ranks of the top 3. Whether or not they can win more than one, we'll see, but it was a big enough deal, and I like to highlight it because that's a good thing to see real nullsec players engaging in the big game politics in nullsec, actually winning an Alliance tournament. That's kind of cool. All right, next up, another honorable mention. It's a CSM thing, which is why I didn't put it in the main group, but we had the CSM elections, in August, and the result was the CSM was expanded to 12 from 10. What happened? Well, CCP decided that they were going to add 2 additional seats to the CSM, and those seats would be chosen by CCP, not by the players. Now, they would have to be chosen out of someone who had run for the CSM and gotten into the top 20, but they could pick whoever they wanted from that top 20. And the result was Stitch Caneland, after I think this was his 5th time running, finally won because he was chosen by CCP. And Kshal Aderon, who is a high-sec player, won as well. And those 2 are on the CSM. Mike Azariah, reelected to his 6th term. He joins our boy Nom Nom, Innominate, and Steve Renukin as the longest tenured CSM members of all time. They both have served 6 terms. And then, of course, the sad news was our boy Pando was not reelected to the CSM. And instead, we got Dark Shines from Init, and we had Angry and Kaz, obviously, from Goonswarm that won. And then Storm Delay and Alcoholic Satan, 2 Horde candidates were both elected this time, which is an interesting thing. And of course, Mark Resurrectus won too. So there's a wormhole. You say nerf Ansiblexes and you don't get, well, that's not true because Amelia Dustbase got in. And
it depends who your
he's big Ansible
electorate is, really. You know, who, if you're from a null group and you say that, you're going to have a very difficult time forward.
That's going to be rough. It's going to be rough.
Now, you know, I got to
go ahead. Tell me.
Related to the 2 seats, I'm not a huge fan of that. You win or you don't. This was always a game that sort of made its hay because the developers kept their hands off the scales. Now, I know I say that very tongue-in-cheek because they frequently pounce onto the scales when they feel like they need to. But this is just one where it's like, well, yeah, sure, the players can elect people, but we'll bring who we want anyway. You know, the people that have what we want to hear to say. You know, there was never a problem with 10 players of there not being enough takes to go around, or like some good idea went unsaid because there were too few perspectives in the room. 10 was too many fucking people. You know, you couldn't get a word in edgewise a lot of times. So what 12 does is it merely just says, we're going to show a shocking amount of favoritism to a couple people, and, you know, go fuck yourself. If you can't get elected on your own, we're going to do it anyway. I never am really a fan of that stuff. I just think it's lame as shit.
I'm not a fan of it either. And I thought, you know, for the guys that got 11 and 12, you know, it sucks to be them. They got so close, but they weren't the ones that got picked. So as always, it's elections are rough. And if you are close but not there, you're still not there. So in any event, I wasn't a big fan of the expanding to 12. I was happy that at least the way that they did it was not taking away, like they could have just said, well, we're going to only have 10, but we're going to take 2 of those and make them CCP picked people, and then you've lost 8. It's not good. We don't like that. And yes, I know all about stolen elections. They're bad.
The extra 2 should have to sit in the hallway during the meetings and just listen.
Yeah, they shouldn't go. It should be like the old days where they don't get to go to Iceland. They just have to.
Right. I remember that being a thing, like where there were
we can only afford to bring 10 of you.
Right. It was varying degrees of being on the CSM, basically.
Exactly. Kids table at Thanksgiving, 100%. All right, moving on. We're finally at the meat of the list here. Number 10. And this one, I think, you know, people may argue with us, but I think Mark and I will say this was definitely deserved to be on the list. This was Mrs. Brisc's biggest selection as well, which is 10 Twitch drops. Finally. And I know this may not matter a ton for those of you who are not streamers, but I think it does matter for those of you who are not streamers because you're getting the benefit of these drops. After years of us begging, and people in the Eve Partnership Program, people on the CSM, anybody in the streaming community begging, hey, all these other games have Twitch drops where you get cool in-game cosmetic items for watching streams. Man, it'd be great if we could do that for Eve. After so many years of being told, well, it's really hard and we don't know if it'll be worth it and all this other kind of stuff, we finally got it. And what was the result? The numbers for people watching Eve Online on Twitch have skyrocketed, and they have stayed up, amazingly enough. Mark, this was your baby.
Yeah. There are games with 1/10 of the player base of EVE Online that have 10 times as many people watching them on Twitch. And say what you will about streaming or anything like that. You may not be a huge fan of it, but I'll tell you what you're probably a fan of. Looking at your number of players logged in, and we're creeping towards 35,000 right now on a Saturday afternoon while nothing is really happening whatsoever. And is all of that a byproduct of Twitch drops? Of course not. But this is sort of one of those, the ecosystem is getting healthier, and this is one little part in it. It's a tiny link in that ecosystem. I can't tell you, you know, as a person who runs a corporation that takes on a lot of new players, I hear it constantly from our recruiters, our frontline recruiters. I found this game on Twitch, you know, and now we're going to check it out because we saw, you know, you guys, well, we weren't streaming the game. We were streaming us slamming brewskis and ranting about who knows what, but we are players.
There was even the background.
Right. So there was even the background, and that seems to be enough. So I'm a huge fan of it. If you have a choice between drops or no drops, drops always. They tested the waters a couple times, if you guys remember, with what you would consider some very, very limited drop campaigns. They've gotten better at sort of stretching those out now, where there's lots and lots of runway in front of people some people are really obsessive about it. I haven't collected a single one because I don't give a shit. It's not for me, but it's incredibly healthy and useful, and it's nothing that's breaking the game either. They're not giving away fucking materials or anything like that. It's all cosmetic and just little stuff that's just helpful. So big fan of this one. Yeah, massive. It's better late than never, so I'm glad they did it, and great that they did. I know a lot of work went in. It's so much more complicated than just let's throw a couple skins in the hopper and they start falling out. It really gets elaborate creating a drops campaign with a company like Twitch.
It is. And I would love, listen, all you guys wanting Twitch, wanting Twitch drops, wanting Titan drops. Yeah, I agree with you. That'd be fun. Titan drops would be fun. Cat ears drop. That would be fun too. But in the meantime, what are we getting? Well, we're getting great skins, and we're getting Galnet skins we can get. We're getting random other stuff. I would love to start seeing a lovely drop campaign featuring our boy Timbre stuff, because we love all of the skins that he designs. So hopefully they'll do that. But I have to say, at least the last month or so, where they have had 2 or 3 day campaigns that were designed around the Winter Nexus event, I think was great. So that made me very pleased. Yeah, skins for co-op ships, not the smartest thing. Just saying. Anyway, all right. Moving on to number 9 on our list of the year. The war in the North ends. Now, Brisc, how can you say that a major nullsec war ending is the number 9th thing? How could there be 8 things more important than us? Well, let me tell you this. This was the most boring war in the history of wars in EVE Online. Yes, there were some big fights. We killed 4 Keepstars in the beginning of March or so. There was a big fight in X47 where both sides combined lost about 1 trillion ISK. There was a massive 5 trillion ISK dread brawl in the middle of this war that had absolutely no reason to even exist.
I think Horde's still pinging about that today.
They're
still riding high on that one.
This, like, if this was a Horde show, that would be the number 1 thing that happened this year, because it's the most important thing that's ever happened to them. I'm just saying. Okay. But for the rest of us who were in here, if you were in Brave, if you are in Volta, if you were in Blob, if you were in the Imperium, if you were in it, this was the most boring war ever, because it was just constant pinging back and forth, structure fights. Every couple of months there'd be a big feed, and that would be it. But the rest of the time it was all structure bashing. It was all setting up random timers in the middle of the night that nobody was going to alarm clock for. And it fizzled out at the end. And in the end, it wasn't even a big fight and we won, ha ha ha, it's over. It was literally, okay, guys, we're tired of this anymore. We're just going to do something else. So bye. I mean, it wasn't even the end of like the Great War, of like Vietnam, where at least there were a couple of big fights at the end where you're like, all right, we know that this is the end. There was a massive fight, and then Pappy starts unanchoring Keepstars in the middle of it. All right, that's it. It's over. We know it's over. Here, it was just it was an announcement. I mean, Mark, when was the last time you saw a war end with a ping?
This one was, we just were talking about it a minute ago. The gravity of situations like this are based on your perspective. So if you're in the Imperium, well, you're just taking a couple jump gates. You're a fucking tourist in a war, basically. You're doing war tourism where you're visiting some other poor bastard space to go slap people around for a little while. And at the end of it, you go back home. It's like camping or something like that. If you're brave, however, it's all quiet on the Western Front. It's a fucking grinder. It's a total disaster. Structures are getting blown up. Sav is flipping. It's one nightmare after another. We have been there before and we know what it's like. So I think in the case of this particular war, most people knew how it was going to end. If Pan Duff Fam in its entirety and its totality leans on B3 or whatever they were called at the end there, that's there. You're not going to make it. That's just too much. The numbers are not in your favor. It doesn't work even with your friends from the South helping. Without, supers and shit like that, it just can't be done. So in the case of this one, I think what you were waiting for all along was the B3 people to say, you know what? I think we've had enough. Check, please. And the
Yep.
moment you got that, then obviously, groups like Initiative, the Imperium, et cetera, that had been lending some pretty heavy support to that, were like, oh, thank God, let's get the fuck out of here, tear the tent down, and let's go home and sleep in our own bed again. So it was odd. It was a really odd situation. I think it's sort of a gesture of friendship for the groups that are hanging. If you're in Goons, you don't want to be like, have you guys had enough yet? Have you guys had enough yet? You don't want to look like a goddamn vulture hanging over this. But, I'm glad when they finally did say, you know what, we're going to just pack it up. I think our pilots were pretty sick of that one. So it was good to go home.
And that leads us into our next couple of these, which was number 8. Actually, this was a bigger deal, and then we'll get to the next part of the War in the North ending. But number 8, moving on to Potageddon in 1DQ. Obviously, this was a big deal at the end of the year. We had the J-amazingness situation. We had the massive corp theft, trillions of ISKCON. And I think the biggest thing about it, though, was the loss of the pods. Although, thank God for downtime, which saved us from losing all of these pods. That was a big deal. That was I think, probably the most impactful of what he did. And it's kind of the one thing that everybody keeps talking about. But Merc, I know I'm going to get yelled at and people are going to mock me for saying this, but I'm going to say this and then you can tell me if I'm full of shit or not. I have seen, as far as I can tell, almost no lasting impacts from this. It happened and that's it. Nobody took advantage of it. Nobody pushed out and did it all. Yes, that is my character in the scope video. They used my poor dead pod as it. Nothing happened. It just been a thing. And now nobody's seen Jay in weeks, and that's it. It's I don't get it.
Yeah, it was. You would prefer something like that doesn't happen on 2 levels. Obviously, it's really inconvenient. You got to replace a bunch of shit, and sometimes it even happening creates you to have to inventory shit that you weren't even aware was sitting around, and you're like, oh, fuck, what was that even doing there? So I think for the organizations, you just sort of circle the wagons and do your best. You saw a lot of the different corporations, crowd fund their members getting back into their implants and shit like that. I mean, I lost a bunch of them myself, and it's inconvenient, but in the grand scheme of things, I think if you're going to try to capitalize on something like that, the invasion had to be landing in 1DQ the moment the server came back, and even then, that's an impossible play. So this was just something terrible that was done out of spite and boredom in equal measure, and it amounted to nothing other than being a footnote in a this is what happened this year thing. So high five.
There you go. Now, back to what we were talking about with the War in the North, number 7, this, I think, was probably the biggest impact from the end of the War in the North. First of all, right before the war ends, you have Init deciding to leave the Imperium. This was in July. The war ended in, I want to say, October. But Init leaves the Imperium. But then right as they're leaving, Brave decides to join the Imperium. So we have, boom, all of a sudden, everybody's back. And at least on the Brave side, this was something that we had been talking about and trying to make happen for years, literal years. And we could never get Brave to pull the trigger, despite the fact that they were in a completely abusive relationship with the rest of the Legacy Coalition, where they were being treated like they were the odd man out. They were forced to move all their stuff out of Ketch, forced to move to Quirius, lost all their space in Ketch, then lost all their space in Quirius, had to move to Pureblind, spent 2 years getting dunked on by Fraternity, and then ended up where? Back in Quirius, where they would have been in the first place, because that's where we would have put them if they had joined us in the first place. So the whole thing around this was just kind of odd, and it was just a weird set of circumstances that finally resulted in Brave joining the Imperium. And at the same time, in it deciding, okay, we've been here for a long time. And I know I've talked to Dark Shines. We had him on the show after this happened. We've heard many, many times that this is one of those things where he was kind of like ready to go. Then the war happened and he waited until everything was fine. Everybody was back in a good place and it would have the least impact for them to walk away. And that's when they did it. So there you go. Merc, do you agree with that contention or tell me? I know you have a lot of thoughts about the Brave situation. I know.
Yeah, I mean, Brave had to go on a great Hajj apparently before they arrived at the conclusion that I think everybody saw is that they were tailor-made to be a member of the Imperium. It's no secret that I was a member of Brave back in 2014, and I was a part of the failed coup boys who tried to wrestle control of that alliance from Lichten Condor at the time. May he rest in peace. Just because it was not fun having groups like PL and NC Dot just sit on your undocks and clobber the ever-living shit out of you every single day with ships that you could not contest in any meaningful way. And it seemed like the only organization that ever showed up to lend a hand and actually put the wood to them was, somebody like Big Red Boat in a bomber fleet, to wipe out some Archons or something like that. So there were a lot of people that I think really wanted to see this happen for a really long time. I don't know. KarmaFleet would not exist if it had. So I guess in a way, I'm very, very glad that it didn't. Better late than never, I suppose. I hope they're finding it, to be a good place. I can tell you one thing we're never going to do with Brave as an ally. We're never going to force them to move into hostile space on the promise that it's going to be theirs before they know it. And in the process of that happening, they lose everything they hold, and then they lose that space too. So they can expect a little bit better bedfellows, I think, from a group like ours.
Now, the number 6 thing, we were talking about this last night on Rampage, and there were some funny things that I wanted to include. The guys wanted Fountain Frank to come out and do his top 10 list for the year. I don't want him on the show because he's a dickhead. So I ended up trying to grab a couple of things that I thought were cute that we could add in here to make top moments. And this, I think, was one of the top moments of the year, at least for me. And it was one of the most liked Reddit threads of the year. And it has to do with Brave. And it is a perfect example of why, no matter how annoying you are, no matter how much of a dick you are, even the guys in PL, everybody in EVE Online has a little bit of love for Brave, because they are the plucky little guys that do the stuff that nobody else will do. And they have fun doing it. So number 6 was the lone Brave miner during the Dread Brawl in QTAC 5. QTAC 5 was Brave's staging system up in Pure Blind. And there were massive fights at the end of the war. And this guy literally is out in a fucking venture mining during a massive dread fight. Now, there's conflicting reports of whether or not he survived this, whether he won or whether he didn't, whether he survived, whether he made it back. Did he get to keep the ore? Did he not? I don't even know who the guy is, but this guy is a fucking Chad. And this is why everybody loves Brave, because that's the type of shit that they do. It's amazing.
Is absolutely incredible. Hats off to him. It's not often in a 20-year-old game you can do something that makes veteran players' jaws hit the floor like, oh shit, that's wild. This just goes to show that it's never too late in EVE. People always worry like, they've already wrote all the books about EVE. They've done the down the rabbit holes. Did I miss my shot to do something amazing? I don't think this little venture dude undocked thinking I'm about to go full fucking legend right now. And yet he did. So that's a pretty incredible part of the community in the game.
That's it. And as Mark and I have become miners in the last couple of weeks, I feel a kinship with this poor guy in the venture going out and doing his thing.
Indeed.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
All right. Now, the next up one, listen, okay, this is my show. I can be a little egotistical when I want to, all right? And since half the people on Reddit are already arguing that Brisc is a narcissist, well, here's some more fuel for their fire. This doesn't deserve to be in the top 10, but fuck you, it's my show. I'm going to put it in the top 10. So, 5.5. Me and Seema joined KarmaFleet this year. It finally happened after so much time. There was a Reddit thread mocking me for this, saying, "Bye Imperium, hi Imperium," about me leaving STK, leaving in it after 5 years and joining KarmaFleet. And now it's been almost 6 months. I'm having a good time.
Can we say much like the little miner, Seema has gone legend in that interceding time 100%. Period. Like not a day goes by that. I mean, he's got people telling him to rewire the power in his house and shit like that. It's out of control. He's totally out of control right now.
It's to the point, and I love it because Seema is famous enough that people will see his name in a post after they've read it and realize, oh, he got me. But then then he's also at the same time not famous enough that he cannot scam or at least pull the wool over the eyes of people with his ridiculous posting. And it's not just in the game. He does it in Eve mails. Seema has, I have to give him credit. There is nobody in Eve Online, in my opinion, who will take a joke as far as Seema will. And he's gotten temporarily suspended in the game for sending out Eve mails to people. Like, I mean, he will take that joke and he will run with it. Websites, so many websites. My whole CSM career was a Seema joke. It started as a Seema joke. So the whole thing, like, I love the fact that he's in KF with me. It's been forever. I miss all you in it, guys. I really do. I miss hanging out with the boys. I love you all very, very much. But I have to say, I've had quite a lot of fun over the last 6 months in KarmaFleet. Having space work, having a job, and having to do things has been interesting. But I don't think I fucked anything up really, really bad.
No, there was that one time. See, this is something that a lot of people who are new to corporation and roles in EVE Online don't understand. There's a bills tab and it's got all the alliance bills, like fucking Saab bills for wars, shit like that.
I paid a bill I shouldn't have paid.
Brisc is like, hey, yeah, I logged in. Don't worry. I took care of all the bills. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I paid all the bills. And I'm like, well, they're all automatic. And I'm looking and I'm like, you're paying for the entire alliance's stupid wars that we don't care about. So yes, if that's the worst thing you do, I think we got off pretty easy. If there's one thing that we do have enough of, it's money to go around for the bills, I suppose.
That is true. That is true. Hoff asks, why did he get suspended? So when people send me nasty stuff, I would tend to forward it to Seema, and then Seema responds to them with funny things, mocking them for what they sent to me. And one of Seema's superpowers is he will make jokes, long-running jokes, that end up being so close to real life that people think he's spying on them.
Like Rattati in the Red Lobster. That was a great one where there were people quoting that this happened it was completely invented, you know?
Like, and he invents all, like his whole thing, like Matani stole my bike stuff, all this stuff. He makes these jokes. And there was a guy that was sending me death threats, and he sent him an Eve mail and talked about real life stuff about like the Brisc Rubal Home for Hot Unwed Mothers, which he has created out of whole cloth, is apparently headquartered in this tiny town in Pennsylvania that happened to be next door to the place where the guy that was sending me death threats lived. So he thought we had tracked him down, and that's what got Seema a 7-day ban in the game, which I thought was hilarious. But this is the type of shit that Seema does. It's just, and it's amazing. Like, he's really, really good at it. So anyway, Brisc and Seema joined KarmaFleet. I thought was worthy enough to get on the list. You probably don't agree. And of course, the folks that hate me are going to be like, look at that Brisc, he's being a fucking egotist again. But you know what? Fuck you, it's my show. Anyway, moving on. Number 5, the actual number 5, the Viridian expansion. Now, there were 2 expansions this year. Okay, we had Viridian in July, and then we had Havoc in November. Viridian was kind of, I thought that this was not going to go over that well, honestly, because I didn't think there was enough there. And I was worried about this because I was still on the CSM at the time. And I was like, guys, I don't know if this is big enough to be an expansion, if there's enough stuff in there. But holy shit, people loved it. And it included a number of things that were critically, like people really liked, which was number one, structure skins. We finally got to paint all the Keepstars, all the amazing colors that we could. We've got the Miami Vice Star in KarmaFleet. You had the pink Keepstar in 1DQ for a while. Now we got the B Keepstar. Fraternity's Keepstar was pink. Braves is blue. We've got all kinds of structures everywhere. And that was amazing. And I think that I didn't realize that was going to be as big a deal as it was. And I think a lot of people have appreciated that. And then Lancer Dreads, Tech 2 Dreads finally arrived and have been a source of continuing controversy since they came out, especially the impact on the Drum Freighter situation. So Viridian as an expansion, in addition, there was also Corp tools and some other things that they added in there. The Corp tool stuff they finally fixed and made better by allowing us to pay people out for completing Corp assignments. And that's something that I think a lot of folks are going to start using a lot more of in 2024. I know that I expect we will probably start, at least KarmaFleet will probably start looking at it more in 2024. But in the meantime, the Viridian expansion, I think, was kind of like something that started the momentum going in the right direction for the rest of 2023. What was your take on that, Merc?
Yeah, anytime you're going to have a mechanic that's pretty new, and I know lancing existed with Titans, but a 5 billion-isk lance is a lot cheaper than a 200 billion-isk lance. So people were really, really worried that the sky was falling and that you were never going to see a jump freighter ever again. I'm glad to see that hasn't happened. Yes, you had some weenie lose 9 of them in a row or some shit like that to what will be probably the greatest Lancer camp of all time and not to be repeated. But otherwise, I'm all for new stuff. It can't hurt. The Lancer Dread, I suppose some people would look at it as disappointing because it doesn't have major play in the meta whatsoever, really. But give it time. I think that they'll probably iterate on that guy here and there until they drag it onto the scene a little bit more. But I think we're all in agreement that more spaceships is better than not more spaceships. So, we'll take what we can get.
And as Bane notes here, KarmaFleet lost and killed the first Tech 2 Dread, a Bane. As Colton says, the Bane by Bane for Bane. So there you go. I think, frankly, the fact that we had capitals added to the game for the first time and for a while, which was, I think was a big deal. I appreciated that. And then second of all, it was, frankly, these are not, I don't think these were designed for the fleet meta. And I think that's okay. It's nice to have some capitals that are designed for solo play or for, smaller level stuff. And the tackling ability of those lances has created an entirely new type of gameplay. It has made jump freightering a lot more, risky than it had been in the past, which I don't think is a bad thing. But yes, there are definitely, I agree, like the guys in the chat talking about carriers, T2 carriers, having more carriers would be good. That would be great. I think that would be fine, but that's something down the road. And frankly, the Skynetting thing is the least, I think, of what carriers should be doing. They definitely need their revamp. But I am happy to say, I think we're in the midst of a bit of a dread renaissance. They have become a go-to ship for a lot of people. They're still a little too expensive for my taste, but in the meantime, there's a lot of different flavors, a lot of different uses, and folks seem to be big fans of the Dreadnought now, which is probably the best it's been, the best the Dreadnought meta has been in a decade or so, since the old days of Passav, when they were critical. All right, up next, number 4. We're getting into the meat. We're getting into the meat here. We're almost at the end. So if you guys have not, and I will plug the show one time, we're almost at that point. We're about 45 minutes in. In about 15 minutes, Twitch is going to do their normal 17 hours worth of ads. So you have the next 5 minutes while I'm talking to subscribe to the show. It's $4.99. That way you don't get hit with an hour's worth of ads as we hit an hour. We can't do anything about it. Twitch forces us to show ads on the show. We don't want to. We don't need them, but we don't have a choice. So if you're thinking about throwing us your Bezos bucks, you're thinking about subscribing, go ahead and do it now. There is a 25% discount. That way you don't get stuck with the ads as we get to the end of the stream. Now, next up, number 4. This was, I think, a huge moment for the game. And thank you, SEMA, for throwing money at the stream and throwing ads out for people. throwing subs out for people so they don't get ads. That's great. The Down the Rabbit Hole documentary. This was Frederick Knudsen's documentary. We had him on the stream, I want to say on the show about a month and a half or so ago. This was essentially Empires of Eve on YouTube in a movie, 6 hours long. Amazing history, amazing review. Got everything right except for how to pronounce strontium. And it was just a lot of fun. And I think more than anything, it hit at the exact right time. It hit at the exact right time that we were getting ready for the new expansion. The game was in a relatively good place. This thing hits, and then numbers just started rolling. And it was crazy.
It's exactly like the Twitch drops. Is this the single arrow in the quiver that made the game have more people around? Of course not. But did 3+ million people watch this video?
Right.
Holy shit. Yes, they did. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And clearly it shows, as you're getting to pretty good freaking numbers. Would we rather have 60,000 people? Of course we would, but I'll take 35 any day of the week.
Yep.
That's a pretty good thing. And Fred did play his part in that.
And it was amazing. And I think if you have not watched it, go watch it. All you got to just Google Down the Rabbit Hole EVE Online. It'll come up. This was one of the best documentaries I've seen. It kind of makes me want to go back and do the Vietnam documentary we started talking about on the show 2 years ago and never got around to finishing. But it was a great documentary. Did a great thing for the show. I shouldn't say for the show when he was on our show, did a great thing for us, did a great thing for the community, did a great thing for EVE Online. And frankly, that's 3.2 million people that have watched this since November. That's crazy. And for the most part, it was all normies that watched it. These are people that are not EVE people. They're regular people who watch this stuff, and wow, they are getting to see everything about this game right in the way. So I have to say, I was pleased with it, and I'm very happy that we were able to play a part in that, in the plugging of that show when it came out. Number 3, we're getting near the end. Number 3, you can probably guess what's coming up. Top 3 things of the year. Number 3, the TTT. The unkillable high-sec Keepstar that would never die because it was protected by a coalition of all the major nullsec alliances. PanFam, Fraternity, the Imperium, everybody was in it. Everybody got a taste. TTT, never going to die. But how did it die? Not with a bang, but with a whimper. CCP makes a change that removes the ability to anchor any large XL structures. No more Keepstars, no more Satoyos in high-sec. Grandfathers all the existing Satoyos and Keepstars in high-sec. And instantly, the Imperium decides, and along with Init, we're done. We don't need to be part of this thing anymore. Pulled out. And it didn't last a week before this thing was dead. And it died uncontested, which was absolutely, to me, the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I think partially that was because Gobbins fucked up and didn't understand high-sec war deck mechanics. But in any event, it died uncontested. Merc, this is crazy.
It was something. I don't think they should have ever existed, but you play the game that you've got, not the one that you want. I'd like to see all that shit wiped out and gone and, whatever. But it was surprising to me because if you imagine the sum total of income that structure provided for the signatories that were part of the agreement, never before has such a momentous boon been completely ignored when push came to shove. I mean, it was just like, well, fuck it, it's dead. This thing has probably made, X or Y or Z alliance trillions of ISK in its lifetime, but yeah, we're good.
We're done.
We'll just let it go, so it was interesting in that regard.
And it's a big enough deal that CCP added a wreck of the Keepstar on the grid where the old TTT was, so that you can go see that in the game. If you go to Perimeter now, you can see the dead Keepstar, which I think is cool. That to me tells you that this was a big deal in CCP's mind, and it was a big deal in the game's mind because, wow, this unkillable structure is finally dead. Now, what's the long-term impact of this Keepstar dying? I don't know, because the Tranquility Trading Consortium, the TTC, still exists. The groups that are still part of it are still making money. They are still running the perimeter markets. So in the long run, what was the impact of this on the TTC? Not a whole lot. Now, granted, we did see, and we noted this last week during the stream, that the Goblins announced that they were going to be removing all of the industry-related stuff from the TTC because it wasn't making any money, and it was costing them too much to put out instead of actually, you know, doing what they're supposed to do, which is make money off this thing, so that the TTC would only be markets.
Right. And that was you get a bigger footprint, and fighting in high sec is very difficult. So every additional structure that you're adding is one more thing that you've got to worry about. And I think if for a group like ours, who we were at the table and receiving income from it, we are no longer at the table, no longer receiving income from it. If you would say to our leadership, if they had the benefit of hindsight, would you rather be a part of it or would you rather not be a part of it? I think it would be pretty squarely in the, I am very happy to have that leash removed from our neck. Like, we have enough other shit to focus on that sort of becomes a distraction. And it's kind of something people hold over your head, like you're a scumbag for participating in it in the first place. So I'm kind of glad that we don't have to deal with it. I think with organizations that are very, very big, taking the combined organizational strength of your membership and your leadership and all that stuff and focusing on something is very powerful. And you want to be focusing it on things that really matter to your group. That structure did not matter. It was better to get paid for a couple years off it than not. But I think we're pretty happy in retrospect, even knowing full well that there are people still taking advantage of that income source. We're okay that we're not a part of that because we don't have to fuck around with it unless we care to, you know?
Exactly. So I think, at least in the long term, probably not a huge deal, but in the short term, it was a very big deal. And something that I think a lot of people said was never going to happen. TTT will never die. Well, the one thing we know in EVE Online is if you say something is never going to die, that's pretty much signing its death warrant. Now, moving up, number 2, the Havoc expansion. This, I think, I got to give CCP a ton of credit for this, because I think between the Twitch drops, down the rabbit hole, the Havoc expansion, the Viridian expansion, they have moved from win to win to win. They've done a ton of major things this year that have all worked amazingly enough. And the Havoc expansion, I think, was the culmination of this. You have Zarzak, brand new space in the game, potentially could have been a real problem, but so far it doesn't seem to, like the changes that they've made, adding bubbles and stuff, have made it work pretty well. It's not doing the things we were concerned it was going to do. It is doing the things it was supposed to do. Tons of other stuff being added. Excuse me. The Angel Titan. After years, we finally get our Crab Titan. The Angel Titan becomes a thing. New ships added to the game. A new Titan added to the game. After the Lancer Dreads earlier this year, we've had multiple new Titans, or multiple new capital ships added to the game in this year. It's amazing. And the faction warfare numbers are off the chart. And I have to say, faction warfare is in such a good place. Those nerds have been taunting nullsec on Reddit for like the last 2 weeks, especially as Fraternity has this big spying scandal that's been going on. They've been coming at us like, hey, you guys don't need to be in these big groups to have fun. Come hang out with us in faction warfare space and stuff. And I have to say, it's pissing me off. But I appreciate the fact that they're doing so well that they think that they can give us the finger, which is, that's a good sign. That is what I like to see in EVE. So while it pisses me off, I'm also happy about it.
The other really popular refrain is like, for years, faction warfare just wallows. You know, it's like it needed so much attention because it was not doing what it was supposed to be doing, and the players themselves, the developers, everybody was in agreement about that. Now that it's doing significantly better, one of the most common things you see on the forums and stuff like that is like, get these filthy fucking null bears out of faction warfare.
Yeah.
We don't want your kind out. And it's like, all you've wanted for years was more players to play with, but I guess not these players. You want a different other player to be there playing. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool, the enlistment where your corporations can sort of unite behind a certain faction or another. It's cool. You know, I'm not a big low sec person. That's not my preferred kind of space to play in or anything like that. But I'm super happy to see reports coming from the front lines that people are out there, they're undocking, ships are exploding, and they're having fun.
Now, I've mentioned the fraternity spying thing, and everybody's like, what's going on with this? Why aren't you talking about this? This is probably worth its own show, which is why we need to probably do a show about it, because I think it's important to talk about this stuff. Essentially, my understanding is fraternity, their counter intel people or their third-party development tool people got caught harvesting IP addresses from folks that were clicking on links or potentially using spy networks to do ping relays and things like that, and we're getting people's information when they did that. That became a big deal because in a game filled with IT nerds like EVE Online is, the minute people start seeing things like, my personally identifiable information is out there on the internet, oh my God, I can't do it, this is amazing. And then there were accusations that everybody does it. If you use a dashboard, they're logging your IP. If they're using this, they're logging your IP. If you're using that, they're logging your IP. And it became a big deal. But in the end, I'm not sure what the impact is going to be because, frankly, every major nullsec group does this type of stuff because you have to. Like, this is a game of where meta spying is a thing. And if you cannot track people down to make sure they are who they say they are and where they should be and stuff like that, you're going to have a lot of problems. And frankly, I think the issue was blown out of proportion. I think it's definitely an issue for folks that are not in nullsec who don't understand this stuff and who are not, used to it. And I think the faction warfare guys are trying to blow this up to like, hey, we're not going to take your IP info. I guess, and as I noted on Reddit, and I made a joke about it, but apparently it went over somebody's head. If you're a sovereign citizen, maybe you're not going to like this. But for the rest of us, we already kind of expected, so it's not like it mattered. To me, at least.
I mean, I feel betrayed in a way because a certain spy master told me that they were a Nigerian prince. And they had $1 million that were trapped in escrow, and all they needed from me was my checking account number to transfer the $1 million onshore. I still am waiting for this.
You never got your money?
My credit score is 275 for some reason, and I still don't have my $1 million. So I take umbrage with this spy master bullshit. I think they might be a bunch of liars.
You know how it is. It's a thing. In any event, I don't think it's a big deal. I think for the most part, those of us in nullsec probably don't think it's a big deal. Those of you who are in IT, everything is a big deal to you because you have nothing better to do with your time, so you're probably complaining about it. Folks in faction warfare, hey, this is a way we can distinguish ourselves from the nullsec guys. Hey, if you don't want to get spied on, come out and hang out with us in faction warfare. Okay. But in the event, I don't know how big of a deal it is, but I do think it is something we should probably talk about, because I think if you are new to the game, especially if you're one of these influx of people who have come in, you're not going to know this stuff. So it's probably worth us at least talking about it. So maybe I can make Apple Pear come on the stream, or Hyper have it come on the stream. That would be fun. Anyway. And here we are. We are at the end. It is 5 o'clock. The number one, the top 10, the number one biggest EVE moment of 2023. You guys should probably see this coming because it's a little obvious, but EVE turns 20 years old. We are almost old enough to drink as a video game. Da-da-da-da! And in addition, the player counts are way up. And I put these together because I have to say, It is rare to find a 20-year-old MMO. It is even rarer to find a 20-year-old MMO that is not legitimately in maintenance mode. And I know our boy Nom Nom loves to say Eve's in maintenance mode, and we hear people, oh, Eve's in maintenance mode, this is not it, and all this other. It should have been Meta Show finish another season. That would have been good, TZ. But we talk about, oh, it's in maintenance mode, we're in maintenance mode. No, we're not in maintenance mode, because you don't get major expansions every 6 months if you're in maintenance mode. You don't get increased numbers of people playing when you're in maintenance mode. It's a big deal, and the fact that we hit 20, the game is still being invested in. It is still making CCP money to the extent that they are creating additional IP in the form of Vanguard. And I forgot to mention, as part of the Havoc expansion, we had the Vanguard integration potentially. So the FPS that we've been waiting for years is finally a thing, and it's coming out.
And it was decent.
And it wasn't bad.
Everybody was expecting, yes, I see we're in an ad break. It was a total clusterfuck. Most games in the pre-alpha phase, we were actually just talking about this last night. You expect games that are at that phase of release, pre-release, to be a complete disaster. The performance of that game was perfectly fine. And yes, we can argue about, I can't jump on a rock and it feels weird, or I don't want to build my own ammo and shit like that. But boys and girls, that was a serviceable product that give them, it's next year maybe or something like that. They're coming out with it. I pat on the back for them. I didn't expect it. I thought we'd never see the damn thing. Maybe we're just cynical or something like that, but there it is. And there weren't just pages of pages on Reddit about this game is crashing my computer. This game keeps crashing. This game keeps crashing. It was just, oh yeah, it's okay. I wish it was more than one map. You know, maybe I wish I could see more than one gun. Let's see where we're at when we actually get to the alpha, or maybe the beta or the pre-release. I think they're sitting pretty. I think they did themselves a service with it. It worked out fine. And lots of players like you and I, who we don't necessarily have a huge vested interest in playing it, we're going to give it a shot, you know, when it's ready. And I'm glad that we got to see it, you know.
There we go. And again, as always, every time I tell you people about the ads and that they're coming and to be prepared, somebody doesn't pay attention, and then I get yelled at because of a bunch of ads. Sorry, guys, we can't control the ads. Either get Twitch Turbo or whatever the fuck it's called, or subs to the stream, and then you don't get ads. You can use your Amazon Prime thing. Although I did see Amazon Prime is increasing their rates if you don't want commercials during the shows anymore.
Those son of a biscuits. Yeah, $2 a month or $2.99 or something like that more. It's really important to note, streamers used to be able to choose whether or not they had advertisements running on their stream because it was a monetization vector. You can't choose anymore. I would say the reason you can't choose is because 99.9% of streamers would turn that shit off instantly, because it benefits Twitch significantly more than it benefits the streamers. Even one person complaining about it is one person too many. They would be off. If they could be turned off, they would be off.
Correct. I don't know when the ads start, guys. I can't do a message to tell you, hey, ads are going on now, because I don't know. Anyway, that is number one. Eve turns 20 and the player counts are way up. As I noted at the bottom of the screen, you can see the Tranquility hit 40,000 concurrent users in November. First time since I think 2019. The numbers are just consistently high. And there were a lot of people saying, well, it's just because the new expansion's out, or, oh, it's just because they gave away free Omega and stuff. But the numbers have stayed up. And if you look at Eve Offline over the last 2 or 3 months, we're averaging about 31,000, and that was up from like 22,000 like a year ago. So all of the indicators are in the right direction, which makes me happy. And we can see it every night. The game feels more full. There's more stuff happening in other areas of the game besides nullsec. Frankly, I wish there was more happening in nullsec, but I expect that that's going to pick up next year, starting on Wednesday. We'll find out. But I think as long as the other areas of the game, as long as HiSec is doing okay, as long as Faction Warfare is doing okay, I think things will be all right. Now, did we miss anything? Is there anything you can think of that we didn't do, Mark?
I have the memory of a goldfish in the first place. So as we were going through these last night on the show, every one of them was an epiphany to me. I was like, oh my God, I forgot that was this year.
That was this year.
I can't think of a single goddamn thing. I guess you could mention, much like you always do with Eve and with groups of players that have been around for a really long time together, a lot of fun real world stuff happens. Lots of friends meeting each other in real life, doing stuff. A lot of friends hanging out on streams. Unfortunately, friends passing away that aren't with us any longer, as you know. Sure. It's just one of those things about
being a big one
in a community like this. But you know, you wouldn't change the way the community works and the way we sort of get together and embrace each other. But I mean, other than that, I an in-game event, so to speak, I can't think of a damn thing. I mean, it's a pretty good list. And I told you when we were talking about it yesterday in the afternoon, just ask the stream, because Eve players have incredible memories usually. And it was like, we went from having 3 things to mention to 25 in about 10 minutes. It was ridiculous.
For those of you who want to know what happened in Wormholes this year, Mark isn't here, but I'll give you the update. The biggest thing that happened in Wormholes this year was Mifune's Sword God joined Mark's Wormhole Corporation, which brought the total number of players in Wormhole Space from 26 to 27. Congratulations, Wormhole Space.
Good job, guys.
Massive increase in numbers this year. Nerf Blue Loot. Just saying. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the show, and it brings us to the end of this year. 2023 was a long year for a lot of people. It was an interesting year, I think, for us. As much as we thought not a ton happened in nullsec, as we showed you over the course of this show, there was a lot of shit that happened this year. It was kind of crazy. We started here on the Meta Show. This is our 2nd episode of our 5th season. I would like to say thank you all for continuing to make us one of, if not the most watched Eve talk shows. You are here every Saturday for us. We've seen big tick ups in the number of folks that are watching us on YouTube. We've seen a lot of people starting to watch us or listen to us on the podcast version. I appreciate the fact that you guys come in here and expect content from us every week. We're doing our best to make sure that we do that. Next year, again, as I said, we've got 5 episodes. And we're in the 5th episodes of the 5th season. We are going to be doing lots of different things. We're going to change formats sometime. We're going to do podcast shows instead of doing a live show. We're doing all the types of things we've been doing over the last year to kind of keep it interesting. But we're going to make sure that we're still here providing you with content as long as you people want it. So thank you all for being the best audience in EVE Online. Thank you for being one of the best audiences on Twitch. We love having you here every week. We hope that you'll take a minute and take a look at the other shows that we provide on Imperium News. Obviously, we've got Meta Show. We've got Push to Talk on Saturday. We've got various shows during the week. We've got Eve streams. We've got different streams from different people playing other games. We've got a D&D stream now. We've got a lot of fun stuff. And I would like to thank Merkel Chen for taking a Saturday afternoon off to hang out with me, because God knows we don't spend enough time talking to each other on the internet.
Yeah, I'm happy the year is closing. This was a grinder of a year. Let's hope 2024 is a little more gentle on humanity as a whole than 2023 was. That's probably largely out of most of our control, but I'll tell you what, we'll keep showing up. We're going to keep being a part of these fun communities. If you're lonely, if you're looking for some friends, seek us out, seek these groups out. You don't have to be. If you're putzing around in your venture, wondering what you should be doing in this game, come find us. We'll help take care of you. There's a seat waiting for you at the bar right now next to us, and we'd be super, super happy to have you. So happy New Year, everybody. I be careful out there. Don't drink and drive. Use an Uber. If you're in Iceland, using whatever they call it. It's too confusing for me to say. Exactly. The haberdashery or whatever it's called. Take care of yourselves. You know, let's start the new year off right. Maybe go for a jog here and there. You know, we got to hit the gym in January.
So get your gym memberships you're never going to use again.
Indeed. So take care of yourselves and Happy New Year, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the final Meta Show of 2023. I am Brisc Rubal, joined alongside Merkel Chen. Thank you all for watching. If it's Saturday, it's the Meta Show. and you stay classy, Nui.